Usually, this place is the beating heart of the greatest republic on earth. It's where laws are made, where trials are held, where the voice of the people is heard. But today, the forum is silent. A terrified, suffocating silence hangs over the crowd. They are gathered around the rostra, the speaker's platform, but there is no speaker today. Instead, nailed to the wood, dripping fresh blood onto the stone, is a pair of severed hands. And right above them, a severed head. The crowd knows that face. It's the most famous face in Rome. It belongs to Marcus Tullius Cicero, the greatest orator, the brilliant lawyer, the man who tried to save the Republic with words. But words don't stop steel. Cicero's head and hands were hacked off by a centurion on a country road while he tried to flee in a litter. They were brought here not by a foreign invader, not by a barbarian horde, but by the orders of a young man. A boy, really? A 20-year-old kid who had been dismissed, mocked, and underestimated by every powerful man in Rome. They called him the boy. They thought they could use him. They thought he was just a sickly, fragile teenager with a famous last name who would do what he was told and then politely disappear. Cicero himself had cracked a joke about him. He said the young man should be praised, decorated, and immortalized. In Latin, the word for immortalized also means lifted up tis lifted up to a high place to be killed. It was a clever pun, a death threat wrapped in a compliment. Well, the boy got the joke, and now the boy is the one nailing hands to the podium. This is not the story of a marble statue in a toga. This is not the story of a boring old man who brought peace to the world. This is the story of the most successful, ruthless, and brilliant mafia boss in human history. This is the story of how a sickly teenager walked into a pit of vipers, killed them all, and crowned himself the king of the world without anyone even noticing he did it. This is the story of Augustus, but before he was Augustus, before he was a god, he was just Octavius. If you looked at Gaius Octavius at age 16, you wouldn't see a conqueror. You'd see a liability. He was born in 63 BC to a respectable, but hardly royal, family. His father died when he was 4. He was raised by his grandmother and mother in a house that was protective to the point of suffocation. And for good reason. The kid was sick, constantly. We don't know exactly what he had: colitis, eczema, asthma, maybe all of the above. He couldn't deal with the heat. He couldn't deal with the cold. If the wind blew the wrong way, Octavius was in bed for a week. In a society that worshipped physical strength, where political power was won on the battlefield, Octavius was a non-starter. But he had one thing going for him, one golden ticket. His great-uncle was Julius Caesar. Caesar was the most powerful man on earth. He had conquered Gaul, he had won the Civil War, and he had declared himself dictator for life, but Caesar had a problem. He had no legitimate son. He had a daughter, Julia, who died in childbirth. He had a son with Cleopatra, Caesarion, but a foreign bastard couldn't inherit Roman property or titles. So Caesar looked at his family tree and saw this skinny, sickly, quiet teenager. He decided to test him. In 46 BC, Caesar was fighting a campaign in Spain against the last survivors of the Civil War. He called for Octavius to join him. This was Octavius's moment. He leaves Rome, but immediately gets sick. He's bedridden for months. By the time he recovers, he grabs a few companions and races towards Spain. But their ship is wrecked off the coast. They wash up on a hostile shore, soaking wet, freezing, with enemy patrols everywhere. Most rich kids from Rome would have surrendered or died. Octavius didn't. He led his small band across hostile territory, dodging patrols, surviving on scraps, until he finally walked into Caesar's camp. Caesar was stunned. He looked at this pale, shaking kid who had just walked through hell to get to him, and he saw something. He saw grit. He saw a cold, hard determination that didn't match the fragile body. Caesar allowed Octavius to ride in his carriage for the rest of the campaign. We don't know what they talked about in that carriage, but by the time they got back to Rome, Caesar had made a decision. He silently changed his will. He sent Octavius across the Adriatic Sea to Apollonia in modern-day Albania to study and train with the legions. It was basically a gap year abroad, but with more sword fighting, and then the world ended. March 15th, 40 for BC, the Ides of March. We all know the scene. Caesar walks into the theater of Pompey. The senators surround him. The knives come out. Et tu, brute, 23 stab wounds. The dictator is dead. But here is the part of the story we often skip. What happens when the news hits Apollonia? Octavius is 18 years old. He's playing ball with his friends when a courier arrives. The message is short and devastating. Caesar is dead, murdered by the Senate. Rome is in chaos. His friends and military commanders tell him to run. They say, go east, hide in Macedonia. If they killed Caesar, they'll kill you too. His own mother writes to him, begging him to stay away from Rome, to renounce his name, to live a quiet, obscure life so he doesn't get murdered. And this is the first moment where we see the real Octavius. A normal person takes the money and runs. A normal person chooses life. Octavius looks at the letter, looks at his friends, and says, I'm going to Rome. He crosses the Adriatic in a small boat, landing in a quiet port in southern Italy. He wants to know one thing, the will. When Caesar's will is read aloud in Rome, it drops a nuclear bomb on the political landscape. Caesar didn't just leave Octavius some money, he posthumously adopted him. He gave him his name. Gaius Octavius was gone. Now he was Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus. By taking that name, he wasn't just taking a title, he was taking on an obligation of vengeance. In Rome, if your father is murdered, it is your holy duty to destroy the people who did it. Octavian, as we'll call him now, decided he was going to take it all. He marches toward Rome, but he doesn't have an army. He has a name, and it turns out that name is magic. As he walks through the Italian countryside, veterans of Caesar's old legions hear that Caesar's son is passing through. They come out of their farms. They line the roads. They kneel. They offer him their swords. By the time he reaches the outskirts of Rome, the sickly teenager has a crowd of thousands behind him. But Rome is occupied. The man currently running the show is Mark Antony. Antony is everything Octavian is not. He's huge. He's a brawler. He drinks wine by the gallon, vomits in public assemblies, and rides around in a chariot pulled by lions. He was Caesar's right-hand man, his best general. Antony looked at Caesar's will and was furious. He thought he was the heir. Who is this kid? This Octavius? Antony laughed at him. When Octavian arrives in Rome, he requests a meeting with Antony. He walks into Antony's palace, which, by the way, was Pompey's old house that Antony just stole, and the scene is pure high school bullying. Antony makes Octavian wait in the antechamber. When he finally lets him in, Antony doesn't even stand up. Octavian stays calm. He asks for his inheritance so he can pay the 75 drachmas that Caesar promised to every citizen of Rome in his will. Antony laughs in his face. The money is gone, kid. State secrets get lost. Antony thinks he's won. He thinks he's crushed the boy. But he made a fatal mistake. He underestimated how dangerous a checkbook can be. Octavian goes to the auction block. He sells everything he owns. He sells his own estates, his mother's jewelry, his lands. He bankrupts himself, and he uses that cash to pay Caesar's legacy to the people of Rome. The public goes wild. Look at this boy. He's selling his own clothes to pay us what his father promised, while Antony is spending our money on wine and women. Overnight, Octavian becomes the hero of the people. Antony looks like a greedy tyrant, but popularity doesn't save you from swords. Antony has the legions. Octavian has a fan club. He needs an army. And to get an army, he needs the Senate. Enter Cicero. Cicero is the leader of the Senate faction that killed Caesar. He hates Antony. He thinks Antony is a drunken brute who wants to be a king. Cicero looks at Octavian and sees a tool. He's just a kid, Cicero thinks. He's got the Caesar name, which attracts the soldiers, but he's weak. I can use him to destroy Antony, and then I'll pat him on the head and send him home. Cicero starts giving speeches, the Philippics absolutely destroying Antony's reputation. He praises Octavian as a gift from the gods. He convinces the Senate to give this 19-year-old illegal command of an army. It works. The Senate sends the two consuls, Hirtus and Pansa, along with Octavian, to fight Antony in northern Italy. They clash at the Battle of Mutina. It's a mess. Antony is defeated and forced to retreat over the Alps. But in the fighting, both Roman consuls, the heads of state, are killed. Convenient, isn't it? Some rumors say Octavian's men helped them die. Maybe, maybe not. But the result is that Octavian is now the sole commander of the Senate's army. He sends a message to Rome. I want to triumph, and I want to be consul. The Senate laughs. You're 20 years old. The legal age for consul is 42. Nice job beating Antony. Now give us the army back and go away. Cicero thinks he's in control. He makes that famous joke. The young man must be praised, decorated, and immortalized. Octavian hears the joke. He turns to his soldiers and points toward Rome. If they won't give me the consulship, he says, touching the hilt of his sword, this will give it to me. He marches on Rome. The Senate panics. They have no troops. Octavian walks into the city, holds a sham election, and becomes the youngest consul in the history of the Republic. His first act, he passes a law condemning Caesar's assassins to death. But the game isn't over. Antony is still out there. And he's joined forces with another of Caesar's generals, a guy named Lepidus. Together, they have massive armies. Octavian knows he can't beat them alone. So, he does the one thing nobody expects. He betrays the Senate. He sends a letter to Antony. Why are we fighting? We're both Caesar's men. The real enemy is the Senate, who killed him. Let's make a deal. In November 43 BC, on a small island in a river near Bologna, the three men meet. Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus. They set up a tent. No guards. Just the three of them sitting at a table, deciding the fate of the world. This is the formation of the Second Triumvirate. It's essentially a military junta. They divide the empire like a pizza. Antony gets the East and Gaul. Lepidus gets Spain and Africa. Octavian gets, well, he gets the leftovers. Sicily and Sardinia, but before they can rule, they need money. And they need to make sure nobody stabs them in the back. So they pull out a scroll of papyrus, and they start writing names. This is the proscription. It is a state-sanctioned hit list. If your name is on the list, you lose your property. You lose your citizenship, and anyone can kill you for a cash reward. In fact, if you don't kill a proscribed man when you see him, you can be executed too. They argued for 2 days. Antony wanted to kill his enemies. Lepidus wanted to kill his, and Octavian. The historians tell us Octavian was the most reluctant to start the killing. He tried to argue against it, but once he agreed, he was the most ruthless of them all. Antony put Cicero's name on the list. Octavian had called Cicero father. Cicero had saved his life. Cicero had given him his army. Octavian hesitated. Then he let him go. He traded his father for a few of his own enemies. The terror that followed was unimaginable. Rome became a slaughterhouse. Heads were piled up by the Forum. Slaves betrayed masters. Sons betrayed fathers for the inheritance. It was a purge of the entire Roman aristocracy. 300 senators. 2,000 knights. Gone. This is how Octavian funded his war, with the blood money of the Roman elite. With Rome subdued and their bank accounts full, Octavian and Antony look east. The assassins, Brutus and Cassius, the guys who actually stabbed Caesar, have built a massive army in Greece. They call themselves the Liberators. In 42 BC, the forces collide at Philippi. It is one of the biggest battles in antiquity. 200,000 soldiers. The fate of the Republic hangs in the balance. And where is Octavian? He's in bed. He's sick again. While the battle rages, the future emperor is lying in his tent, shivering. His camp is actually overrun by Brutus's forces. If he had been in his bed, he would have been stabbed to death, but he had crawled out to hide in a marsh. Antony, meanwhile, is fighting like a demon. He smashes Cassius's wing of the army. Cassius, thinking they've lost, commits suicide. A few weeks later, in the second round of fighting, Antony crushes Brutus. Brutus kills himself. The Liberators are dead. The Republic is dead. But the credit goes to Antony. He is the hero of Philippi. He mocks Octavian for hiding in the swamp. After the battle, they reshuffle the deck. Antony, the big winner, takes the East. The East is rich. It has gold, silk, spices. And it has the most fascinating woman in the world, Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt. Antony goes there to play king and raise funds. Octavian gets the short end of the stick again. He is sent back to Rome. His job, settle the veterans. This sounds boring, but it's actually a nightmare. Tens of thousands of soldiers want land. There is no free land in Italy. So, Octavian has to do something that makes everyone hate him. He has to kick Italian farmers off their land to give it to the soldiers. Imagine the government coming to your house, kicking you out at spear point, and giving your keys to a retired Marine. That was Italy in 40 BC. Riots everywhere, famine, misery. Octavian is the most hated man in the West. To make matters worse, Antony's wife, Fulvia, who was a terrifyingly capable woman, and Antony's brother, Lucius, decide to exploit this hatred. They raise an army against Octavian. This leads to the Perusini War. It's a nasty, gritty civil war fought in Italy. We have archaeological evidence of how personal this got. Archaeologists have found lead-sling bullets, basically ancient bullets from the siege of Perusia. They have messages inscribed on them. One of them literally says, "I seek Octavian's ass." Another says, "Lucius Antonius, you're bald." It's vulgar, it's petty, and it's brutal. But Octavian wins. He starves them out. He spares Lucius because he can't kill Antony's brother yet. But he sacrifices 300 of Lucius's officers on an altar to Julius Caesar on the anniversary of the Ides of March, human sacrifice. He is sending a message. I am not the sickly boy anymore. I am the son of a god, and I will burn you. By 36 BC, the triumvirate is crumbling. Lepidus tries to make a power play, thinking he can take Sicily. Octavian walks into Lepidus's camp alone and talks Lepidus's own army into defecting. It's a Jedi mind trick. He spares Lepidus but strips him of all power, exiling him to a nice villa where he can't hurt anyone. Now, there are only two. The board is cleared. In the west, Octavian. Disciplined, ruthless, rebuilding Rome, presenting himself as the defender of traditional Roman values. In the east, Antony, living in Alexandria, dressed like a Greek king, drunk on power and wine, sleeping with the foreign queen, Cleopatra. The Cold War begins. Octavian knows he can't just attack Antony. Antony is still a Roman hero to many. He needs to change the narrative. He needs to make Antony into a monster. He starts a propaganda war that would make modern cable news blush. He paints Antony not as a Roman general, but as a love-struck slave to an Eastern witch. He's forgotten his country. Octavian says he's wearing makeup. He's giving Roman provinces to Cleopatra's children. He wants to move the capital to Alexandria. Antony helps him out by doing exactly those things. He holds the donations of Alexandria, a massive ceremony where he and Cleopatra sit on golden thrones and divide up the Middle East among their kids. But Octavian needs a smoking gun. He hears a rumor that Antony has deposited his will with the Vestal Virgins in Rome. The Vestal Virgins are the holiest priestesses in the city. Their temple is a sanctuary. To enter by force is a sacrilege punishable by death and eternal damnation. Octavian doesn't care. He marches into the Temple of Vesta. He grabs the will. He walks into the Senate and reads it aloud. The will allegedly states that Antony wants to be buried in Alexandria with Cleopatra, not in Rome. The Senate gasps, a Roman general wanting to be buried with a foreign queen. It's the ultimate betrayal. It proves he is no longer Roman. Octavian has what he needs. But he's smart. He doesn't declare war on Antony. That would be a civil war. Romans hate civil wars. Instead, he goes to the Temple of Bellona. He picks up a spear dipped in blood, and he hurls it into a patch of ground representing enemy territory. He declares war on Cleopatra. He frames it as a defense of Western civilization against the decadent, corrupt East. It's not Roman versus Roman. It's Rome versus the sorceress. The final showdown is set. The entire Mediterranean holds its breath. The fleets are gathering. The sickly boy has survived the purges, the battles, the sickness, and the politics. Now he stands on the prow of his ship, looking toward Greece. He is 31 years old. He has half the world, but he wants it all. And to get it, he has to destroy the only man left standing. This is the climax of the ancient world, the Super Bowl of antiquity. On one side, Mark Antony and Cleopatra, commanding the largest, heaviest battleships ever built. On the other, Octavian and his brilliant admiral, Agrippa, with a fleet of lighter, faster, more maneuverable ships. The fleets meet off the coast of Greece. The water is churning. Arrows and catapult stones darken the sky. Antony's massive galleys are like floating castles, but they're slow. Agrippa's ships swarm them like hornets, ramming their oars, disabling them, then backing off. Octavian, as usual, he's not doing much of the fighting. He's on his flagship, watching. He's not a warrior, he's a manager. He hired the best admiral in the world and let him do his job. And then something bizarre happens. In the middle of the battle, Cleopatra's Squadron 60 ships loaded with gold and treasure hoists its sails. They aren't attacking, they're running. They punch through the lines and flee south toward Egypt. Antony sees her leaving, and in a moment of pure, pathetic madness, he abandons his fleet. He abandons his army. He jumps into a small boat and chases after his girlfriend. His soldiers watch in disbelief. Their general, the great Mark Antony, the hero of Philippi, just ditched them to chase a skirt. The battle is over. The war is effectively won. Antony's leaderless fleet surrenders. Octavian doesn't rush. He takes his time. He secures the loyalty of the East. He marches slowly toward Egypt. When he finally arrives in Alexandria the following year, the tragedy plays out. Antony, hearing a false rumor that Cleopatra is dead, falls on his sword. He botches it. Of course, he doesn't die immediately. He bleeds out slowly, begging to be taken to Cleopatra. He dies in her arms. Cleopatra tries to negotiate with Octavian. She's charmed Caesar. She's charmed Antony. She thinks she can charm the boy. But when she meets Octavian, she realizes something terrifying. This man is ice. He doesn't want her. He doesn't want her love. He wants her as a trophy. He plans to drag her through the streets of Rome in chains for his triumph. Cleopatra is the descendant of Alexander the Great. She is a queen. She will not be a slave. She smuggles poison, or maybe an asp the legend says, into her mausoleum. She commits suicide. Octavian is actually annoyed. He wanted her alive for the parade, but he respects the move. He allows her to be buried next to Antony. Then he turns his attention to her children. He spares the younger ones, but he asks about Caesarion, the son of Julius Caesar, the boy who shares his name. Octavian asks his philosopher friend, Arrius Didymus, for advice. The philosopher gives him a chilling line. It is not good to have too many Caesars. Octavian nods. He has Caesarion hunted down and executed. There can be only one Son of God, and now he stands alone. The year is 30 BC. Octavian is 33 years old. He owns the entire Mediterranean. Egypt is his personal property. The Senate is in his pocket. The army is loyal. The war is over. The Republic is dead. The Empire has begun. But here is the twist. This is the moment where most conquerors fail. Alexander died at 32 after conquering the world because he didn't know when to stop. Napoleon, Hitler, Caesar himself, they all pushed too far, or if they got assassinated because they looked like tyrants. Octavian looks at the dead body of Julius Caesar in his mind. He remembers why his father was killed. Caesar acted like a king. He wore purple boots. He sat on a golden chair. He made people call him dictator. Octavian realizes that if he wants to survive, he has to lie. He has to lie on a scale so massive, so comprehensive, that it becomes the truth. He returns to Rome in 29 BC. He holds a massive triple triumph. 3 days of parades. Gold, giraffes, prisoners. The people go insane. He pours money into the city. He pays off debts. He throws games. Then, in 27 BC, he walks into the Senate. The senators are nervous. They expect him to declare himself king or dictator for life. Instead, Octavian stands up and does something shocking. I have avenged my father, he says. I have brought peace to the world, and now I resign. He offers to give all his power back to the Senate. He offers to retire to his private life. It is a masterful piece of theater. He knows the Senate can't let him go. If he leaves, civil war returns. They are terrified of chaos. They need him. The senators, some of them in on the act, most of them just scared, beg him to stay. Please, they cry, save us, don't leave us. Octavian pretends to be reluctant. Well, if you insist, I will stay, but only to help. I will take the difficult border provinces to keep you safe. You can keep the peaceful ones. The Senate is relieved. They vote him a new name. They consider Romulus the founder of Rome, but that sounds too much like a king, too bloody. Instead, they choose a word that has never been used as a name before. An adjective usually reserved for temples or holy ground. Augustus, the revered one, the illustrious one. It's vague. It's majestic. It's perfect. From this day forward, he is Augustus. He isn't a king. He isn't a dictator. He calls himself princeps, first citizen, just the first guy among equals. Nothing to see here, but it's a lie. He holds the imperium, command of the army. He holds the tribunicia potestas, the power to veto laws. He controls the grain supply. He controls the treasury. He has absolute power, but he wears a plain toga woven by his wife. He lives in a modest house on the Palatine Hill. He walks the streets without bodyguards. He sits in the Senate and lets people argue with him. He creates the greatest illusion in political history, the Principate. A monarchy disguised as a republic, and it works. The Romans are so tired of war, so tired of seeing heads on spikes, that they happily trade their freedom for order. They look at Augustus and see a savior. He starts to rebuild Rome. He finds a city of brick and leaves it a city of marble. He builds the Forum of Augustus, the theater of Marcellus, the Pantheon, the original one. He cleans the Tiber. He sets up the first police force, the urban cohorts, and the first fire department, the vigils. He creates the Praetorian Guard, an elite unit to protect the emperor. Spoiler alert, this will turn out to be a terrible idea for future emperors, but for Augustus, it works. He reforms the tax system. He conducts a census. Yes, that's census, the one in the Bible. He initiates the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For the first time in centuries, the gates of the Temple of Janus are closed, signifying peace throughout the empire. Trade flourishes. You can travel from Syria to Scotland on Roman roads using Roman coin under Roman law. It is a golden age, but while Augustus is saving the world, his own house is falling apart. This is the great irony of his life. The man who could control armies, senates, and economies could not control his own family. Augustus was obsessed with his legacy. He needed an heir. A male heir of his own blood to ensure the system survived him. He had one child, a daughter named Julia. Julia was spirited. She was beautiful, intelligent, and completely uninterested in her father's traditional family values campaign. Augustus tried to use her as a broodmare. He married her off to his nephew, Marcellus. Marcellus was the golden boy. Everyone loved him. Augustus looked at Marcellus and saw the future. Then Marcellus died mysteriously, a sudden illness, strike one. So Augustus married Julia off to his best friend, Agrippa. Agrippa was old enough to be her father. It was a gross mismatch, but Agrippa was loyal. They had children, sons, Gaius and Lucius. Augustus was thrilled. He adopted Gaius and Lucius as his own sons. The succession was secure. Then Agrippa died. Strike two. Augustus, getting desperate, forced his stepson, Tiberius, to divorce his wife whom he loved and marry Julia whom he hated. It was a disaster. The marriage was miserable. Tiberius hated Rome, hated politics, and hated Julia. He eventually ran away to the island of Rhodes to sulk. Meanwhile, Julia rebelled. While Augustus was passing laws making adultery a crime punishable by exile, his own daughter was hosting orgies in the Forum. Rumors swirled that she was sleeping with half the Senate. She was partying on the rostra, the very place her father had once displayed Cicero's head. It was a scandal of epic proportions. It wasn't just bad behavior, it was political treason. She was humiliating the emperor. When Augustus found out, he didn't cover it up. He exploded. He wrote a letter to the Senate detailing her lusts. He refused to see her. He banished his only child to a tiny, barren rock of an island called Pandatiria. No wine, no men, no luxury. He never saw her again. When people asked him to forgive her, he told them, "If you ever bring up her name again, may the gods curse you with a daughter like mine." But the curse wasn't over. His grandsons, the heirs, Gaius and Lucius. Lucius fell sick and died in Massilia. 18 months later, Gaius was wounded in a skirmish in Armenia. The wound festered. He died on the way home. Strike three, strike four. Every single person Augustus loved, every single person he groomed to take his place, died. The rumors started to whisper. Was it bad luck? Or was it Livia? Livia Drusilla, Augustus's wife. She was the love of his life. He had divorced his first wife while she was pregnant to marry Livia, who was also pregnant with another man's child. They were married for 51 years. She was his counselor, his rock. But Livia had a son from her first marriage, Tiberius. The historians, especially Tacitus, paint Livia as the evil stepmother to end all evil stepmothers. They suggest she systematically poisoned everyone standing in Tiberius's way. Marcellus, poison. Agrippa, poison. Gaius and Lucius, poison. Is it true? Probably not. Disease was rampant in ancient Rome. People died young all the time. But the timing was suspicious enough that the Romans whispered. Augustus was devastated. He was an old man now. He had conquered the world, but he sat alone in his palace, surrounded by ghosts. He famously banged his head against a door frame, crying out, "Quintilius Verus, give me back my legions." After a disaster in Germany destroyed 3 of his armies, he was cracking. He had no choice left. He had to adopt Tiberius. He didn't like Tiberius. He thought he was gloomy, cruel, and arrogant. He once said, "Alas for the Roman people, to be ground by such slow jaws," but Tiberius was the last man standing. So, in 04 AD, Augustus adopts Tiberius. The succession is set. The Republic will not return. The monarchy will continue. The final years are quiet. Augustus travels. He organizes the empire. He writes his own autobiography, The Race-Gested Divi Augusti, The Deeds of the Divine Augustus. He has it carved onto bronze pillars in front of his mausoleum. It's a list of his achievements. I built this temple. I gave this much money. I conquered these people. It's propaganda carved in stone. He wants to make sure history remembers him exactly how he wants to be remembered. Augustus 14 AD Augustus is 75 years old. He is in Nola, the same house where his father died. He feels the end coming. He calls his friends into the room. He looks at them, his eyes still sharp, his mind still clear. He asks for a mirror. He fixes his hair. He arranges his jaw so he doesn't look slack-jawed in death. Always the actor, always managing the image. He looks at his friends and asks a question that actors used to ask the audience at the end of a play. Have I played the part well? Then applaud as I exit. He dismisses them. He turns to Livia. His last words are to her, "Livia, remember our marriage. Farewell." And then he dies. But the story doesn't end with his last breath. Because Augustus didn't just leave a body, he left a blueprint. Augustus's body was carried back to Rome. They didn't just walk, they processed. They traveled only at night to avoid the heat, and crowds lined the Appian Way holding torches, mourning the only leader most of them had ever known. When they reached Rome, the Senate didn't just bury him, they debated whether to make him a god. One senator, a man named Numerius Atticus, swore under oath that he saw Augustus's soul ascend from his funeral pyre into the heavens. Was he lying? Probably. Did Livia pay him 1,000,000 sesterces to say it? Almost certainly, but the Senate voted. It was official. Augustus was now Divus Augustus, the divine Augustus. He joined the pantheon of gods he had spent his life building temples to. But let's strip away the incense and the marble. Let's look at the legacy. What did Augustus actually leave behind? He left behind a paradox. On one hand, he was a monster. Let's not sugarcoat it. He signed death warrants for thousands of innocent people. He betrayed his friends. He stole land. He ruthlessly eliminated anyone who threatened his power. He turned the Roman Senate into a rubber stamp committee for his own dictatorship. He killed the Republic. If you were a lover of freedom, a lover of democracy, Augustus was the villain of the story. He was the man who put the chains on Rome. But on the other hand, he ended 100 years of civil war. Before Augustus, Rome was a failed state. It was tearing itself apart every decade. Generals were marching on the city. Proscriptions were common. The provinces were being looted. It was chaos. Augustus stopped the bleeding. He created a system that was stable. He created a professional civil service. He created a standing army that protected the borders instead of sacking the capital. He gave the provinces rights and justice they had never seen under the Republic. If you were a farmer in Gaul, or a merchant in Syria, or a regular citizen in Rome who just wanted to sleep at night without worrying about soldiers breaking down your door, Augustus was a hero. He was a savior. He gave Rome 200 years of relative peace and prosperity. The Pax Romana, it was the longest period of peace in the history of Europe. It allowed ideas to spread. It allowed trade to flow. It allowed a small, persecuted Jewish sect called Christianity to use Roman roads and Roman peace to spread across the known world. Without Augustus, the Roman Empire likely collapses in the 1st century BC. Western history, as we know it, simply doesn't happen. So, was he a good man? No, absolutely not. Was he a great man? Undeniably. He was the ultimate pragmatist. He understood that sometimes people don't want freedom. They want safety, they want bread, they want circuses, and he gave it to them. He proved that a republic doesn't die with a bang. It doesn't die when an invading army marches in. It dies when the people get tired of the chaos of freedom and trade it for the comfort of a strong man. It dies with thunderous applause, or in Rome's case, with a grateful sigh of relief. Standing in the ruins of the Forum today, you can still see the temple of Divus Julius that Augustus built for his father. You can see the remains of his house on the Palatine. But his real monument isn't made of stone. It's in the calendar on your wall, the month of August. It's in the title Kaiser and Tsar, both derived from Caesar. It's in the very shape of the Western world. He was the boy who was underestimated, the teenager who was mocked, the invalid who was supposed to die young. Instead, he outlived them all. He outsmarted them all. And he played the part so well that, 2,000 years later, we are still applauding. This has been Super Simplified History. If you want to see how the empire Augustus built eventually came crashing down, check out our video on the fall of Rome right here. Thanks for watching.